Hey, John here. Real quick, our coffee table was looking a little embarrassing, so I decided to give it a new top. And my wife was going to paint the base a new color. So in the first half of this video, I will show you how I built the new top. Then, during the painting attempt by my wife, it was revealed that the cheap wood did not hold the paint very well. So at the end of this video, there will be a link to the second half of this coffee table to show you how I built the bottom. So don't miss the second half of this video, which will give us all together a completely new coffee table. So let's get cutting. The first thing I did was take it to the garage to see if I would end up destroying this while taking it apart. The good news was that a few screws held the top and table stand together. I purchased 12-inch wide oak planks at Home Depot. This would be enough to cover the entire tabletop. So you understand what I'm doing here. My wife wanted the tabletop to look like smaller individual planks. You can buy 6-inch wide planks, but you will need 6 boards. And buying the wider ones is actually cheaper. It will just take one more step of cutting each wider 12-inch plank in half to give you the individual 6-inch planks. Now that you have all your boards 6 inches wide, we need to slightly give each board a rounded edge. This will keep them from looking like one big piece when you join them all together. Taking a router bit that will ever so lightly take off the sharp edge on each board, I run a test piece through first to ensure I am not taking off too much. With the test piece complete, I run each board through the router to give me that slight beveled edge. You only have to do the top side of the boards, but it will not hurt to do both sides if you want to. I did both sides because I have not yet decided at this point which boards I will use as the top side of the table. With all your boards routed, you can lay them out to see which grain looks good together and to decide which sides will look best facing up. Now with the visible bevel, it clearly looks like these are individual boards. At this point we can begin joining the top together. I start by making a simple line across the gaps of each board. This is where I will put my biscuits. Now you can use dowels here as well. Normally I would say this is overkill and dowels and biscuits are not really needed, but in this case I think they are and recommend you adding them. After all your slots have been cut, slide in your biscuits and place a bead of glue all the way across the board. Ensure to place some glue inside each slot. This will cause the biscuits to absorb the glue and expand, creating a stronger hold. After you press it tight, use a screwdriver covered with a piece of paper towel to wipe up the excess glue that has squeezed out. While we wait for that to dry, we take the original screws that were removed from the top and a scrap piece and check that the screws are not too long because we do not want them to penetrate all the way through the tabletop. I got lucky and the original screws will work, so I will reuse them. While the top is drying, take the base of the table and lay it upside down on the tabletop. Grab a tape measure and center your base. Once you have the base centered, clamp it down so it doesn't move while you screw the tabletop back into position. Originally, I was going to make a straight line and use the base as a guide for the circular saw to cut the ends flush, but I ended up wanting to cut off a dark knot at one end of the table. So I slid the boards to give me about 3 inches overhang, and that would allow me to cut out the knot. In my experience, a black knot does not look good in a light brown oak stained board. Now that my circular saw would not fit between the base and the line, I had to extend my lines up the side of the tabletop so I could flip it over and make my cuts from the top. I simply use a speed square to extend the lines up the side, and then I use a straight edge to draw it all the way across the table. Once that is done, I use the same straight edge as a makeshift track saw guide to ensure my cuts are straight. I simply use clamps to hold the straight edge in place, and then align my saw blade with each, and this will allow me to keep a straight edge when I cut. If you are a subscriber, you know that my favorite item to round corners and make circles is the base of a magnetic screw holder cup. I know, I make this stuff up as I go along, but hey, it works. So to give me a rough curve, I make my marks and use a jigsaw to cut the curved edges. This is just my preference. You don't need to do this. I do it because I fear sharp corners. When you live in a house full of boys that like to wrestle a lot, it can get dangerous. Once your corners are cut, you can give the perimeter of the table a rounder edge. Simply change out the router bit to whatever your preference on how round you want the edge and use that bit. Make sure you run a test piece first so there are no surprises. After the perimeter is rounded, you can give your tabletop a light sanding. Then it will be ready for stain. I recommend 100 grit sandpaper for this step. Did anyone notice the hole under my arm while I was sanding? I think it's time for a DIY on shirt repair. Here I use classic oak stain to bring out the grain of the wood without making the wood too dark. Once complete, I use triple polyurethane and brush it on. This stuff is thick and I want to make sure I apply it evenly. The brush will also help me get into the grooves between each plank because I don't want too much polyurethane settling in the grooves. I set it out in the sun and heat for it to dry. After a few hours, I double check and apply a second coat where I think it needs it. Then I return it to its original location and it's ready to be used. Yep, as my footrest. I broke this video into two parts because originally I had just intended to make the top. But after an attempt to paint the base a new color, the paint would not stick to the cheap wood. So in the second part of this video, we will rebuild the base out of real wood. Don't forget to click the link to part 2 of this video. And as always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button.